Introduction. Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today, we're exploring the incredible life of Janice Rule, an actress, singer, dancer, and later a psychoanalyst. Yes, you heard that right. From early nightclub performances to sharing the stage with legendary Broadway stars, then holding her own in Hollywood before earning a PhD in psychoanalysis, Janice Rule's story is truly one of a kind. In this video, we'll uncover 7 secret facts about her life and career that'll have you looking at old Hollywood in a completely different light. Early dancing career. It's often said that the best performers come from humble beginnings, and Janice Rule's story certainly aligns with that cliché, though humble might not fully capture the daring nature of her early start. To give you a bit more context, Norwood, Ohio is a small city located within the metropolitan area of Cincinnati. Growing up during the Great Depression and World War II era, many families faced economic hardships. While we may not know all the personal financial details of the Rule family, it's clear that Janice had to earn her own way into the arts from a young age. Dancing at Chez Paris in Chicago at just 15 years old was no small feat. Chez Paris was a well-known nightclub that often hosted big variety shows. Even the slight mention of a teenage girl dancing in a venue filled with adults might raise eyebrows today, but back then, it was relatively more common for teenagers to start professional careers early, especially if they had a genuine talent and a supportive, or at least permissive, family. Working there allowed her to pay for her ballet lessons, a crucial foundation for any serious performer, especially someone who had Broadway aspirations. By 1949, Janice Rule was dancing in the Broadway production of Miss Liberty, which featured music and lyrics by the legendary Irving Berlin. This was a big deal for a newcomer in the late 1940s. Broadway was already a highly competitive place, brimming with talented performers hoping for their big break. 1 year later, in 1950, she performed in Great to Be Alive, another Broadway musical that gave her a chance to refine her stage presence and dancing skills. You can imagine the hustle required: daytime ballet classes, nighttime performances, auditions, the pressure of living in New York City. These experiences undoubtedly forged Janice Rule's resilience and perseverance. What's also interesting is that Janice Rule's early training didn't just prepare her physically but also psychologically. Living in Chicago, then moving on to the Broadway stage in New York, and eventually heading to Hollywood, she must have navigated a wide range of personalities and expectations. Perhaps this early exposure to different types of people was one of the first nudges that piqued her interest in psychology. As we'll explore later, her path towards psychoanalysis was shaped by her observation of human behavior, something she'd witnessed constantly in the cutthroat realms of dance and acting. Moreover, the ability to dance elegantly, especially ballet, often underpins a sense of discipline. That discipline might have helped Janice later on when she decided to go back to school to earn her doctorate. It's no small task to juggle an existing career with advanced education, and only someone with exceptional focus and self-motivation could manage both. The early adversity and dedication required in her teenage years at Chez Paris clearly set the stage for the extraordinary path she followed. OFF screen feud with Joan Crawford. We all love a bit of old Hollywood drama, and this story certainly delivers. Joan Crawford was already a colossal star by the time Janice Rule entered the picture. Famous for her distinctive eyebrows, powerful screen presence, and no-nonsense approach to her craft, Crawford was someone who commanded respect, and often demanded it aggressively. It's not surprising, then, that a younger actress with a strong personality like Janice Rule could rub Crawford the wrong way. Janice's screen debut in 14 Hours, 1951, might have been uncredited, but it was typical of how many budding actresses got their foot in the door. She then snagged a contract with Warner Brothers, which, at least in theory, was supposed to guarantee a rising actress a certain number of roles and a pathway to stardom. However, if you know anything about the studio system in the 1950s, you know that these contracts could be a double-edged sword. Yes, they provided a stable paycheck and opportunities, but they also came with strict limitations and controlling studio heads who dictated everything from the roles you played to the way you dressed and even who you dated. Being cast in Vincent Sherman's Goodbye, My Fancy, 1951, was potentially a real breakthrough for Janice. Vincent Sherman was a respected director at Warner Brothers, known for films like Mr. Skeffington, 1944. The original play by Faye Kanan addressed some daring themes: politics, sexuality, and academic freedom. However, as the anecdote mentions, the film adaptation was watered down, which was quite common at the time due to the strict adherence to the Hollywood production code. This code often sanitized scripts to remove anything that might be considered too risque. In the midst of filming, Janice Rule found herself at odds with the formidable Joan Crawford. According to Crawford's own admission, the two had clashing personalities. We can only imagine the intimidation factor, a fresh-faced newcomer alongside a Hollywood icon who had already notched numerous hits under her belt. Crawford was not known for her patience with younger actors, especially if she perceived any hint of attitude or a lack of deference. Janice, it seems, was not one to simply cower. Their tension became so notable that Crawford wrote about it in her 1962 autobiography, basically forecasting that Janice Rule wouldn't last long in the film business. From what we know, Janice was deeply affected by the hostility on set, resulting in repeated takes and on-camera mistakes. It's crucial to remember that on big studio sets, time was money. So if a star felt another actor was slowing down production, tempers could flare. Joan Crawford, being the bigger name, had the upper hand in such a dispute. That Janice stuck it out and endured the tension says a lot about her perseverance. What's intriguing is that Crawford eventually issued an apology to Rule. The cynics among us might argue it was a move to save face, given how publicized their feud had become. Others might say that Crawford had a genuine change of heart when she saw Janice's later work, acknowledging that she was perhaps too harsh. Either way, it's a testament to Janice Rule's talent that she persisted even after someone as influential as Joan Crawford tried to sideline her. Let's also consider the psychological element here. This feud might have planted the seeds for Janice's eventual interest in understanding human behavior on a deeper level. Hollywood sets in the studio era were notoriously stressful environments, hierarchical power structures, rampant gossip, and star egos constantly collided. It's easy to see why someone like Janice, who was bright and observant, might later wonder what exactly causes such tensions, and how they could be resolved or prevented. In modern times, we might equate these sorts of on-set conflicts to workplace bullying or professional rivalry. The fact that Janice came out on the other side, continuing to land roles and later returning to the stage, reveals that she possessed both resilience and perhaps an ability to learn from these negative experiences. Moreover, her later experiences with Joan Crawford, specifically regarding the 1960 film The Subterraneans, showed a kind of full-circle moment where Crawford ended up praising her. It underscores that in Hollywood, relationships can be complicated and ever-evolving. One day's enemy could be the next day's supporter, especially if the tides of public opinion or critical acclaim shift. Leaving Warner Brothers, imagine being on the cover of Life magazine as a rising young star in January 1951. This was a massive deal back in the day. Life was one of the most important and widely read magazines in America. It often catapulted budding celebrities into the national spotlight. The photograph, the storyline, and the general vibe of the feature would have painted Janice Rule as a promising newcomer with a bright future. Yet, in a twist that seems almost unimaginable today, Warner Brothers ended up dropping Janice Rule after a mere 2 films. Studios often had a stable of contract players and would frequently drop them if they didn't fit a certain mold or if initial box office returns weren't promising. The fact that she was let go so quickly is puzzling, especially after the press coverage of Life magazine. There might have been a range of reasons behind the scenes: creative differences, personality clashes, or simply the studio's lack of a clear vision for how to market her. Her second and final film under Warner Brothers was Starlift, 1951, a patriotic musical comedy intended to boost morale for troops serving in the Korean War. This movie was essentially a star-studded variety show, featuring cameo appearances by prominent actors like Doris Day, Gordon McRae, and others who would perform or interact with military personnel. Janice was cast as a movie star, somewhat paralleling her own real-life rising fame, who falls in love with an airman. What's especially notable is that she had the chance to display her dancing prowess in not one but 2 duets with Gene Nelson. Nelson was a multi-talented actor, singer, and dancer. Some considered him in the same tier as Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, though he never reached their level of iconic fame. Dancing alongside such a seasoned performer indicates that the studio recognized Janice's dancing background and wanted to capitalize on it. Ironically, you'd think that kind of positive reception and demonstration of her skills would have motivated Warner Brothers to keep her. Instead, the contract was cut short. Given that Janice had both acting chops and remarkable dance talent, the decision to drop her might reflect the tumultuous environment of the early 1950s film industry. Television was emerging as a real competitor, and the old studio system was beginning to crack. There might not have been enough roles that aligned perfectly with what Warner Brothers envisioned, or perhaps Janice herself resisted the typecasting that the studio wanted to impose. Nevertheless, that cover on Life and the role in Starlift were significant stepping stones. Even if Warner Brothers let her go, Janice now had something valuable: public awareness. She was, at least for a while, a recognized name and face to American audiences, which could help her transition into other opportunities, like the ones she would later find at MGM and then in Broadway revivals. In the grand scheme of her life, being dropped by Warner Brothers might have been a blessing in disguise. It allowed her the freedom to explore the stage world again and, ultimately, cultivate her unique path, both in Hollywood and beyond. Shining on stage and screen. Imagine being on the cover of Life magazine as a rising young star in January 1951. This was a massive deal back in the day. Life was one of the most important and widely read magazines in America. It often catapulted budding celebrities into the national spotlight. The photograph, the storyline, and the general vibe of the feature would have painted Janice Rule as a promising newcomer with a bright future. Yet, in a twist that seems almost unimaginable today, Warner Brothers ended up dropping Janice Rule after a mere 2 films. Studios often had a stable of contract players and would frequently drop them if they didn't fit a certain mold or if initial box office returns weren't promising. The fact that she was let go so quickly is puzzling, especially after the press coverage of Life magazine. There might have been a range of reasons behind the scenes: creative differences, personality clashes, or simply the studio's lack of a clear vision for how to market her. Her second and final film under Warner Brothers was Starlift, 1951, a patriotic musical comedy intended to boost morale for troops serving in the Korean War. This movie was essentially a star-studded variety show, featuring cameo appearances by prominent actors like Doris Day, Gordon McRae, and others who would perform or interact with military personnel. Janice was cast as a movie star, somewhat paralleling her own real-life rising fame, who falls in love with an airman. What's especially notable is that she had the chance to display her dancing prowess in not one but 2 duets with Gene Nelson. Nelson was a multi-talented actor, singer, and dancer. Some considered him in the same tier as Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, though he never reached their level of iconic fame. Dancing alongside such a seasoned performer indicates that the studio recognized Janice's dancing background and wanted to capitalize on it. Ironically, you'd think that kind of positive reception and demonstration of her skills would have motivated Warner Brothers to keep her. Instead, the contract was cut short. Given that Janice had both acting chops and remarkable dance talent, the decision to drop her might reflect the tumultuous environment of the early 1950s film industry. Television was emerging as a real competitor, and the old studio system was beginning to crack. There might not have been enough roles that aligned perfectly with what Warner Brothers envisioned, or perhaps Janice herself resisted the typecasting that the studio wanted to impose. Nevertheless, that cover on Life and the role in Starlift were significant stepping stones. Even if Warner Brothers let her go, Janice now had something valuable: public awareness. She was, at least for a while, a recognized name and face to American audiences, which could help her transition into other opportunities, like the ones she would later find at MGM and then in Broadway revivals. In the grand scheme of her life, being dropped by Warner Brothers might have been a blessing in disguise. It allowed her the freedom to explore the stage world again and, ultimately, cultivate her unique path, both in Hollywood and beyond. Finest performances. Let's take a closer look at why Janice Rule's theater roles are often described as her finest performances. Theater demands an entirely different type of endurance and immediacy than film. The actor must deliver the performance from beginning to end, live, without the luxury of retakes or editing. Critics and audiences have consistently noted that Janice shone brightest under these circumstances. In 1959, she took on the role of a neurotic beauty in Michael V. Gazzo's The Night Circus. Gazzo was best known for his work A Hatful of Rain, which delved into drug addiction and post-war trauma. Therefore, The Night Circus likely had similarly intense themes, requiring Janice to pull off a complex, psychologically fraught role. Her outstanding performance not only garnered critical acclaim but also led to a major development in her personal life. She met her third husband, Ben Gazzara, during this production. Gazzara himself was an acclaimed actor, known for stage and screen performances that revealed an emotional rawness. It's easy to speculate that the two were drawn to each other's passion for deep, transformative acting. Next came the 1960 film adaptation of Jack Kerouac's novel The Subterraneans. The Beat generation was in full swing, and Kerouac's writing encapsulated a sense of rebellion, philosophical depth, and free-spirited living. Janice portrayed a man-hating beatnik, a role quite different from the standard starlet persona of the era. Critics had mixed feelings about the movie as a whole, particularly because Kerouac's distinctive style didn't always translate seamlessly to the screen. But Janice's performance stood out enough to prompt the ultimate moment of public reconciliation, Joan Crawford's apology. Crawford's remarks, praising Janice's dancing, comedic timing, and dramatic flair, validated Janice Rule's talents in a very public way. For Crawford to take back her earlier harsh criticisms was no small feat, given her reputation for stubbornness and pride. This was more than a personal victory for Janice. It was a sign that the industry was starting to recognize her not just as a young upstart but as a versatile and gifted performer. In 1961, Janice starred in The Happiest Girl in the World, a musical adaptation that combined Aristophanes' Lysistrata with Offenbach's music and E. Y. Harburg's lyrics. The concept alone is unusual, blending ancient Greek comedy with 19th-century operetta tunes, then adding 20th-century Broadway sensibilities. Janice played Diana, goddess of the moon, a pivotal figure who sets the plot in motion by inspiring Lysistrata to instigate the famous "No Peace, No Love" protest among women. The piece was comedic, bold, and required a versatile performer who could not only sing and dance but also convey the comedic nuance of a goddess meddling in human affairs. Her duet with Cyril Ritchard as Pluto was a show-stopping moment. Ritchard was already known for his flamboyant style and comedic chops, famously playing Captain Hook in stage productions of Peter Pan. For Walter Kerr to note that Janice and Cyril could have danced all night, and to remark on how naturally they embodied their roles, is a testament to Janice's versatility. The feedback from other critics describing her personal magic, bewitching dancing, and all-around musical comedy skills cements her status as a true triple threat, an actress who could captivate audiences not just with lines but with her movement and musicality. It's these theatrical successes that might have provided the most fulfilling experiences in Janice's career, fueling her passion for challenging roles and complex storytelling. The immediacy of stage acting and the gratification of live audiences often have a profound impact on an actor's sense of accomplishment. In film, an actor might wait months, sometimes years, before seeing the final product and getting public feedback. On stage, the reaction is instantaneous, and in Janice's case, that reaction was often thunderous. During her standout performances, fans would line up around the block, eager to secure tickets and grab playbills emblazoned with her name. Critics in major newspapers frequently highlighted her ability to command attention the moment she stepped onto the stage, applauding her emotional depth and precise choreography. A riveting presence was one phrase often repeated in arts columns. Socialites were overheard gushing in theater lobbies, while everyday audience members would leave the show buzzing about that radiant redhead who can dance, sing, and act circles around everyone else. Local radio programs would sometimes feature brief interviews or backstage snippets, capitalizing on the public's fascination with Janice and her fellow cast members. Fan letters poured in from around the country, some from aspiring performers seeking advice, others simply expressing admiration. Broadway insiders whispered that Janice's star power was quickly eclipsing that of more established names, largely because of her genuine warmth at the stage door, where she patiently greeted admirers and signed autographs. Entertainment magazines seized on these stories, publishing full-page spreads capturing her in mid-performance, describing her as glowing, effortlessly graceful, and a force to be reckoned with. By the time closing night rolled around for any production she joined, the energy in the theater was electric. Enthusiastic supporters who had seen her multiple times would often stand at the back of the auditorium during the final scene, determined not to miss a single second of her performance. When the curtain fell for the last time, rapturous applause and curtain calls sometimes stretched on so long that ushers had to gently encourage audiences to exit. In an industry where attention can be fleeting, Janice seemed to have tapped into a rare kind of artistic alchemy, one that kept both fans and the media enthralled, eager to see what she would tackle next. Love life Hollywood love lives were, and still are, the stuff of tabloid headlines and public fascination. For Janice Rule, her personal relationships were closely tied to her professional life. Her first marriage in the 1950s to N. Richard Nash, not to be confused with playwright Richard Nash of The Rainmaker, though they sometimes get conflated, was relatively short-lived. She had an engagement with Farley Granger in 1956. Granger was also a hot Hollywood property around that time, known for his roles in Alfred Hitchcock films like Rope, 1948, and Strangers on a Train, 1951. The engagement was jokingly referred to as the briefest engagement in show business, suggesting it ended almost as soon as it began. Sometimes, these quick turnarounds happened because of conflicting schedules, personal differences, or even studio pressure. Then came a relationship with Ralph Meeker, her co-star from the stage version of Picnic. As mentioned, this friendship and brief romance led to her role in A Woman's Devotion. It's interesting how these connections worked. Hollywood is often described as a small world. Professional collaborations can easily blossom into something more personal. Her second marriage was to writer Robert Thom in 1956. They welcomed a daughter, Kate, but the marriage ended in divorce in 1961. Robert Thom was known for writing screenplays like Wild in the Streets, 1968, and had a reputation for edgy, unconventional storytelling. One might imagine that living with someone who had an intense creative drive, while also managing her own acting career, added pressure to the relationship. Lastly, in 1961, she married Ben Gazzara, the actor she had met during the production of The Night Circus. They had a daughter, Elizabeth, and stayed together for over 2 decades before divorcing in 1982. Gazzara's career spanned theater, film, and television. He was known for his collaborations with director John Cassavetes in films like Husbands, 1970, and The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, 1976. Cassavetes, Gazzara, and their circle were pioneers of a more improvisational, raw form of cinema, often focusing on psychological depth. During this time, Janice would have been exposed to a creative community that deeply valued the inner workings of the mind, further nudging her toward her later pursuit. Janice's multiple marriages and high-profile relationships reflect the tumultuous nature of show business romances. The demands of acting often include travel, emotional strain, and extended separations, all of which can strain any relationship. Yet, each partnership seemed to contribute something to Janice's growth as both an actress and as someone increasingly focused on the human condition. Interest in psychoanalysis. Now we come to the truly fascinating pivot in Janice Rule's life, her dedication to studying psychoanalysis. The seeds of this interest were likely sown during her intense stage training, her experiences with big studio personalities, and her observation of the psychological toll that the entertainment industry can take on individuals. But it wasn't until the 1960s that she formally started moving in that direction. By 1973, Janice began her studies in earnest. This was no vanity project or side hobby. Earning a PhD from the Southern California Psychoanalytic Institute required years of rigorous coursework, clinical supervision, and personal analysis. Psychoanalysis, particularly in its classical Freudian form, is an in-depth discipline that involves understanding unconscious motivations, childhood experiences, and the complexities of the human psyche. Janice specialized in treating her fellow actors, a natural fit given her first-hand knowledge of the pressures of performing and the complexities of Hollywood culture. Actors often deal with rejection, the stress of public scrutiny, identity confusion when constantly inhabiting different roles, and the precariousness of ever-shifting professional opportunities. Having a therapist or analyst who really gets it from personal experience can be invaluable. It took her 10 years to earn that PhD, culminating around 1983, at which point she began practicing primarily in New York and Los Angeles, both hubs of the entertainment industry. Though she cut back on performing during these years, she never entirely gave it up. Indeed, she continued to act occasionally until her death on October 17, 2003, from a cerebral hemorrhage. This balancing act, maintaining a private practice while still popping up in films or on stage, makes her one of the most intriguing figures of her generation. In an era when female stars were often typecast and expected to age out quietly, Janice Rule charted a different course, defying norms. The mainstream press occasionally ran stories about her dual career, noting how unusual it was for an actress with her background to embark on such an academically demanding vocation. But the shift makes perfect sense if you consider the inherent curiosity she demonstrated throughout her life and career. Her legacy is about more than just her beauty or her acting credits. It's about her intellect, her empathy, and her willingness to reinvent herself time and again. She stands as an example to many who feel locked into one career path, reminding us that it's never too late to pursue something radically new, especially if it aligns with your deeper passions. There you have it, 7 secret facts about the multi-talented Janice Rule, a woman who broke boundaries in show business and beyond. From her humble beginnings in Chicago nightclubs to her legendary onstage triumphs, and ultimately her transformative journey into psychoanalysis, Janice Rule's life reminds us that it's never too late to explore a new passion or reinvent yourself. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community of fellow classic Hollywood fans. We've got plenty more fascinating deep dives into your favorite stars and hidden stories from Tinseltown history. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.